to the point to where they won't leave him alone. And I'm like, at some point it's harassment. It's giving harassment. It's giving, I'm going to hold you hostage if you don't save my relationship. It's giving, no.
What to watch Wednesday? What to watch Wednesday? I need a new show to watch today. A movie, a show, I know me knows what to watch Wednesday. What to watch Wednesday? Yeah.
Hi queens, hi kings, what is up everybody? It is your girl, Mia Lacheyy. Welcome to my channel. For those of you who know nothing about me, hi, my name is Mia. I'm your new fave. You just don't know it yet, but stick around and you will find out. Trust and believe. To get into today's video of What to Watch Weekly, we are going to be reviewing the show XOXO Gossip Girl, which is the reason I kind of have like a little silky on, just something a little fancy to tie into the show and bring a little bit of that show's ambiance this way. I'm gonna let you know what you need to know before you decide to click that button on your remote and watch it. I do have notes just so I can stay on topic and you know, just stay with everything and not veer too far off, because I don't want this video to be too long. First thing you need to know is that this show is actually a reboot. It is a reboot of the early 2000s series. I want to say like 2003, early 2000s series of the show Gossip Girl. I believe this one is called XOXO Gossip Girl, you know, to put in a slight brand different. The overview of this show is basically a bunch of spoiled rich kids. They go to school at the same school, which was in the early 2000s Gossip Girl, which is Constance, which is a private school, and it's just with a bunch of preppy rich kids, spoiled. Like, there really is nothing else to say. This show does have lots of scandal. This show does have its sad moments, and it does have its highs and lows, but we're gonna get into all of that. I'm gonna go through the main characters. So that's gonna be Julian, Zoya, Obi, Aki, Audrey, and Max. Now, granted, there are more characters than this, but the reason I am naming these are because these are the ones that the stories happen to revolve around, main character energy, kind of sort of type thing. So your main character is Julian and Zoya. Julian is a rich girl whose father, I want to say, is like a record executive, and she's actually a social media influencer. We'll get into that in a minute. But now Zoya is not rich, but not poor. She just kind of can't afford the lifestyle that her sister has. They do have money because her father is an attorney. They end up moving all the way from Buffalo to New York. How do I explain their relationship? They are half sisters, first off to speak. She ends up living under her half sister, Julian. You're gonna find that this show is based off of sister versus sister, full on just sister rivalry and sisterhood in general. So if you're not into that kind of thing, this is not the show for you. Then you have Obi, who is basically your Dan Humphrey. Anybody who's watched Gossip Girl can tell you that Obi is Dan. Like, it is what it is. Well, let me rephrase. Obi is Dan Humphrey, characteristic wise, but with a twist. Obi is Dan Humphrey if Dan Humphrey was rich as fuck. Like, Obi is extremely wealthy. His mom comes from money, has a great business. He's well known, he has a high status. So that was kind of a twist to it. But he is actually dating Julian and ends up dating Zoya. Yeah, you heard me right. He's dating one sister, goes from one sister to the other sister. We'll get into it. Let me finish this character list. Then you have Aki. Aki is supposed to be like the Nate. I put him in here as Nate-ish because he's Nate, but he's not Nate. He has a girlfriend, okay? He has a girlfriend, but he's actually struggling with his identity, his sexual orientation. Long story short, he realizes that he likes both women and men, and he goes on that journey within himself. Like I said, has a girlfriend, so that's a different twist. You know, in the original Gossip Girl, Nate and Nate and Blair were together, but they ended up having like issues and they just weren't together anymore. Well, it's kind of like that with Audrey and Aki, but you'll see where their issues lie. We'll get into that. You have Audrey. Audrey is basically your Blair, but Blair without the flair, if you know what I'm saying. So in Gossip Girl, Blair was all about the status. Audrey could care less about a status. All that Audrey really cares about is her friends and her family, honestly, really and truly. I say that she's your Blair because she looks like Blair. Like, I don't know what the writers were thinking in terms of this. I don't know why they chose to get such a hard look-alike for this girl. Her mother actually does do fashion design, kind of like Blair's mom, so you see where I tie in the two. And then last but not least, you have Max. Max is your Chuck, okay? Chuck, and like Chuck never gave a fuck, but like he's your Chuck, but he's a sexually fluid Chuck. Okay, can we just say real quick, the writers knew what they were doing when they said Chuck and Max, because Chuck, Max, a simple name, but with so much mystery behind it, like Chuck, Max. I don't know. It's me. It's just me. So, moving on. Max is super sexually fluid. He hooks up with girls. He hooks up with guys. He does not care. He lives his life, but he has no heart, okay? Like Chuck. But this Chuck likes to buck women and men. So, yeah, that's your relations. Then you have Luna and Monet, but I'm just gonna consider them as like honorable mention characters, because technically when you think about it, Luna and Monet are basically they're the minions of Julian. So Julian is technically your Blair, okay? Because Blair was the one with the status and the minion. But basically all you need to know is that Luna and Monet are Julian's stylist and her like social media manager. That's it. That's their job. That's all they care about. That's literally all they care about. Now, you will see throughout the show that I believe it's Luna. She does actually begin to care about more than just that. But for the most part, no, that's all they care about is rising Julian to the top for their own gain. Yeah, it's real weird, but yeah. Plot wise, this whole entire show is based off of teachers versus students. So the teachers you have are Kate Keller, that's the blonde one you're gonna see. Jordan, I call him the sad puppy because he is so in love with Kate, it's insane. And then you have Rafa, he is gonna be your abusive power teacher, but we'll get into that in a minute as to why. And then you have Wendy, who is just honestly kind of there. She's mean, but she's there. And then I say Zoya's dad. He's not a teacher, but he's also in that category of like honorable mentions as far as characters go. And I don't think he actually has a name, which is insane. When I looked up the cast, which mind you guys, it is so hard to find out who this cast is. Whoever their PR team is, they are not doing the thing, because why can I not find an actual cast list? You know, it's just a little bit ridiculous. But I did a little bit of research, and honestly, I cannot figure out who her dad is, like what his name is. I know the actor's name, but not his character's name. It's literally in there as Zoya's dad. So I guess that's all he is Zoya's dad. That is, you know, character-wise, what you're dealing with. Now, as far as plots and themes, because I don't want to give too much away before you watch this show, just going off of the first episode alone, you're gonna have Zoya, who is Julian's half-sister. Let me get into why they're half sisters real quick so you can understand the rivalry and the plotting throughout this show. They have the same mom, but they have different dads. The mom was separated from Julian's dad and was actually dating Zoya's dad, but she wasn't technically unmarried. So that's kind of where a little bit of the issues come from within the family. So you see where things can kind of go amiss in terms of like relationships and fractures and stuff like that. The dads completely don't want their daughters hanging out, nothing like that. Well, okay, Zoya has just moved to, you know, Manhattan, the Upper West Side. They're staying in their grandmother's old house. Zoya's grandmother is actually in a nursing home and her house is still open, so they're living in her house for a little bit. They're squatting there for right now up until like they can find a place of their own, because like it's New York, it's expensive, you know. It ends up being that Zoya and Julian have actually had a secret relationship that the fathers don't know about and would not approve of. As far as the fathers know, they hate each other, but Zoya and Julian have gotten to know each other off screen, you know, as sisters would do. Zoya goes to the school and Julian makes it seem like she doesn't know who she is or doesn't care to know who she is in front of all her friends to seem cool. But then they meet in the bathroom and she's like, hey girl, missed you. Oh my god, love you. You look like mom. By the way, I have a way to incorporate you into my friend group. And this is where everything just kind of goes downhill. Once you see this part of the story, you're gonna be like, yep, this whole thing sets the tone. The tone that is set in this entire show is, what's another word for fake? Like, yeah, false, but a facade. Yeah. That's what's gonna describe this entire show, is facade, fake, deception. Like, and if you like that stuff, that's good, but if you don't like that stuff, then there you go. They actually end up commingling and she's incorporated into her friend group. Kind of, sort of. The friends ain't there for it. And as far as the friends know, they don't like each other. They don't know each other. But, you know, she's going to give it a chance. Well, towards the end, they find out that, no, that she knew her the whole time. And they had a relationship and, she didn't tell them. And how dare you not tell us that you're friends with your half-sister? Oh my god, you horrible person. And it's like, it technically is none of your business, but that's what kind of shifted the friendships within them all, because you have Audrey who's just like, we don't lie to each other. And Julian's like, well, yeah, but like, I lied to my dad. And they're like, we're not your dad. And it's like, girl, if you don't chill out with all of that, like, what in the world? Girl, bye. It was more funny than anything. Funny in like the peculiar way, and funny as in like comical. For whatever reason, that was enough to make Obi be like, I'm done with you. I'm moving on to your sister, my new boo. Kid you not. Kid you not. Now, granted, during the show, you see that Obi, you know, who is Julian's boyfriend, is just not that into her. Mind you, they've been dating forever, yada yada yada. They're the it couple, la. That's literally how it is. But for whatever reason, he decides to get the gall to leave her the moment he sees her sister. And I'm sorry, that's just a little bit strange to me. You wanted out that relationship for so long, so why does it take another girl? Why does it take your girl's sister in order for you to leave that relationship for her sister? Dear God, do you see where my like anger lies within this show? But continuing on, he decides he wants to be with her sister because she's more down to earth and she's more gritty and she's more raw and real and she's not inauthentic. Like, he feels Julian is. So that automatically right there is going to create sister rivalry. Now I have to backtrack real quick and get into the whole idea of the teachers. Okay. When I was telling you that this whole show is based off of student versus teacher, apparently the students are so spoiled and so rich that like they don't have to listen to a thing, and the teachers have absolutely no authority. And because they're so rich, if they don't like a teacher, they can get the teacher fired. So that sets the tone for the show as well. It literally becomes teacher versus student. And I couldn't think of something that is far more cringier than that, because these teachers are so tired about being put down by the students and, you know, being fired by the students and not having any sign of authority, that, you know, it leads to the tone of the show where this one teacher is like, oh, hey, I used to go to school here. It used to never be like this. Dan Humphrey, my classmate, was actually Gossip Girl. And they're like, what's Gossip Girl? And so she shows them what Gossip Girl is. And they look and they're like, we're going to do this. We are going to scare the absolute shit out of these students and we're going to be Gossip Girl. Thus the chaos ensued. They actually decided to start a Gossip Girl page, which this part I was actually super, I felt was super authentic. This didn't just blow up out of nowhere, and that is essentially social media. You don't just start a page on social media, especially if you don't have status, and it just blow up. Like, that's just not how it happens. So I felt that was real and true to the show. But with that being said, they started and they're utilizing it to take down the mean girls, aka Julian and her clique, and it just is not working, because again, you can't just start a random page out of nowhere tagging a bunch of students and expecting it to hit. And the original Gossip Girl was a blog, and everybody followed that blog. Okay, well, it's modern times now. It's 2021, you know. Gossip Girl is on Instagram, and that seems likely. That seems highly likely, especially since the influencers are going to be on Instagram. So that's where Gossip Girl gets her start. So that takes me to the point of the teachers. The teachers are controlling Gossip Girl, trying to take the students down, and it's just not going anywhere. Well, something ends up happening. I'm not even going to get into too much detail. Just know that the teachers eventually do triumph over the students with Gossip Girl by releasing juicy information on the students, and that is what I am just not fond of in the show. They are constantly antagonizing these students and pitting them against each other by creating, I'm not even going to say creating drama, but by activating drama, because people are turning on each other and sending in tips and stuff like that, and it just becomes a big ball of a mess. So this leads me into my next ordeal. Pros and cons of the show. So my first pro of the show is that it has inclusion. And when I say inclusion, I'm talking about it is full on LGBTQ community, full on. Every, like, you know, for people who have a very fluid sexual orientation, you would like this show because you would feel represented. So there is that. The other inclusion that I love oh so much is that the main character, Julian, which, I mean, I guess technically the main character would be Zoya, but we're just going to say the main characters are Zoya and Julian. But what I want to get at is that Julian, who is the mean girl of the school and the most popular and the most liked, and the influencer is bald. I don't think that could have been better. And I don't think I would have wanted to watch as much if she wasn't bald, because that's huge. Because a lot of times in shows you see like the preppy person or the pretty person, whatever, it like has hair, nails, and everything done to the nines, which, mind you, Julian is a beautiful girl, but she's bald. And I thought that was a start of something new and rather interesting. It was definitely a shift in the power dynamic when it comes to what TV usually portrays, you know, as certain characters. So that gets an A++ from me. Then you have the inclusion of, is it polygamous relationships? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you heard me right. So remember when I said they include LGBTQ? Okay, well, they also include polygamy, and you will see that towards the end of the show. But it hints at it pretty much throughout the entire show. Basically, there's going to be a couple who is just going to want to be a throuple, like a full-on locked-in throuple, and not like an open relationship, but like an actual relationship. So that's different, and I'm gonna give that a whole A+ there. I really enjoyed that they made the main characters, as far as inclusion goes, they made the main characters women of color. So that is huge in, you know, today's society, and it shows that times are changing, and that was definitely worth the watch for me because they were women of color. Lastly, for inclusion, they include the dynamic of, you know, influencer status. You know, I think that's important because it actually is a thing in this time and age. It is what it is, and you know, I think it's so interesting to see it from an outsider's standpoint, just kind of like looking in to see like how would this actually work and what goes on and everything like that. You know, from the beginning of Julian being like this high-end influencer with, I want to say, millions of followers, and constantly, you know, having her boyfriend who's not even in love with her anymore being like, you promised you would do the story. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how it is in real life. Like, you know, you got to keep up appearances and everything like that. So I thought that was kind of cool to include that and just kind of show people how that would work. And then also include, you know, how even though you're an influencer, you know, it can also be a really bad thing. Like, it's a good thing because like you've got money and all of this, but then it's also not such a good thing because it's like you can't last on that forever. You have to have a fallback plan. And I like how they included that in the show. Even though her father was rich, even though she was set for life, even though she was this top influencer and getting all of these gigs and everything like that, I really love how the show included like, hey, this is not solid. Let's go ahead and game plan and plan for the future. That was something that I loved. Something else I forgot to mention, I really enjoyed that they made the main characters, as far as inclusion goes, they made the main characters women of color. So that is huge in, you know, today's society, and it shows that times are changing, and that was definitely worth the watch for me because they were women of color. My cons for this, and you already know it, is that I don't like that this is teacher versus student. It's just not, I'm not gonna say it's not okay because I mean it makes for good TV, but at the same time it's cringy, unruly, and it's just not necessary. Like, I get that the teachers don't have control, but is this the way to get it? It's just kind of petty bullshit that like I'm just not. So the whole teacher versus student thing is definitely a con. My next pro would be the sisterhood. I really like that there is a sisterhood. You get to the point in the show to where Zoya is actually like, I'm not your friend, I'm your sister, and you need to listen to me and get your shit together because this ain't it. And Julian has that realization like, okay, this girl is in my life and she doesn't have to like me, but I love her. And so I think that's really cool. You also see how they come through for each other as sisters, even though they're rivaled up against each other, even though they like the same guy, all this stuff, like they will still be there in the end for each other. There are some things that are done that are questionable, but for the most part, like, yeah, it's pretty cool to see the sisterhood and see them come through for each other. My next con is going to be over realizations. This show had so many realizations. It was like Kylie Jenner. when she was like, this is the year of like realizing stuff. Like, that is literally what this show felt like. Look, I'm all for, you know, character development. I'm all for coming of age. I'm all for lessons learned, morals, all of it. I'm all for that. But when it gets to the point to where you're literally making the same mistakes over and over again and not learning from them, or let me rephrase, making the same mistakes over and over again and learning from them each time and continuing to make those mistakes even though you've learned from them, that kind of pisses me off. It just is not it. And a perfect example of that is Julian and Obi, okay? And Zoya. I'm gonna throw her into the mix too. And the couple Aki and Audrey. Yeah, I'm gonna throw everybody into the mix. First off, Julian makes the same mistakes over again because she keeps realizing, like, I'm a mean girl and I'm gonna be nice. And that storyline constantly plays out throughout the entire show, and it makes me want to go to sleep. It makes me want to go to sleep because she, you know, the first time she realized she was a mean girl and she wants to be nice, I was like, yes. And then something else happens the second time and she's like, I'm mean and I want to be good. I'm evil and I want to use my powers for good. I'm like, okay, yes. And then the third time when she's like, I am a bully and I won't be no more. I'm like, huh? Like, you've realized this already. Why are you continue to do these things? I don't know. I'm the type of person that if I make a mistake once, I'm gonna learn from that and just move on. You know, I hardly ever make the same mistake twice. So that's just me. But also I do understand that this is TV, so I'm just not gonna hit on it that hard. So you have Julian over realizing that she's a mean girl and she wants to be nice. And then you have Zoya realizing over and over again that she doesn't want to be this inauthentic version of herself. So she wants to be the raw version of herself. And then again, she realizes she's being inauthentic and she wants to be raw again and again, inauthentic, pushing away her morals and values and all of this self-worth just to fit in. How many times are you going to do that before you're like, this is not what I want? And she keeps doing that. And I'm like, girl, huh? You've already realized you don't want this life. So, it's just not making sense to me. It's just a full-on cycle of BS that happens throughout the entire show, and I'm just like, y'all are kind of replaying the same storylines over and over again. Like, it gets to a point to where Aki and Audrey want to be in this throuple with Max to the point to where they won't leave him alone. And I'm like, at some point, it's harassment. It's giving harassment. It's giving, I'm going to hold you hostage if you don't save my relationship. It's giving no. And then last but not least, you have Obi, who literally is realizing each time that I'm a rich kid and I have privilege. Julian is my girlfriend, but I'm into Zoya. Zoya is my girlfriend, but I think I'm into Julian. I think I'm back into Zoya. And Zoya's like, no, because you've screwed me over. And he's like, dang. So then he goes with some other girl. And Julian's like, I think I want you, Obi. And Obi's like, no. Like, it's just so much of the same realizations that I'm like, come on. At this point, it's a will they or a won't they. And I think that is what's so tiring to me about this show. My last pro is that the show is very outside of the box, all the while being inside the box. So it's outside of the box by including the polygamy, because they do hit on it pretty heavy in this show that they want a relationship so deeply connected with all three that they are pretty much like, if it don't work out, it's not one breaks up and the other's left out. It's we're all breaking up because we're all a throuple. And I thought that was kind of cool because it kind of gives an insight to polygamy. You know, polygamy is not for me, but it's for some people. So if you're into polygamy, this is the show for you, kind of, sort of, to speak. But it hits on how different it is and how risky it is. And I think that's, you know, essentially good because it's like I don't know anything about it. So for me to actually look into this and look and see, it's kind of refreshing to see something different on TV, you know. So there's that. Also, I meant to say this, Max has two dads. So his dads are gay. And it really hits on that. I do like that he has two dads just because it's different, kind of, sort of. But yeah, I just wanted to include that because it does include, it is outside of the box with him having two dads. So that was pretty cool. Also, the teacher-student relationship with Max and Rafa. So why it's so outside of the box is because at first it looks one way when in reality it's actually another. So Max, you know, is utilizing his privilege, his status to full on be like, you're a teacher and rules don't matter at this school. If I want to have you, I'm going to have you. And the teacher is like, you ain't going to have me. You ain't going to have me fired. You're not going to have my job. And I'm like, so set aside from you losing your job, you would sleep with your student. And as you watch the show, you realize, yeah, he really about that life. Like, he's going to sleep with his student. He shows abuse of power by manipulating and utilizing Max's drug habit. Max is heavy on the drugs and he tries to be the one that's there for Max. And it works and it doesn't in a sense. So Max, you know, becomes dependent on him. And they do end up, you know, eventually forming a type of relationship. But then when it's too late, Max realizes that Rafa was just abusing his power the whole time as a teacher. And that's actually what he does. He literally does that with students. He claims he doesn't sleep with his students, but yet the moment they turn 18, he does. So there's that, and you'll realize that throughout the show as well. But I thought that was interesting and very outside of the box because the power dynamic shifted. It went from Max like seeking and preying on this teacher to this teacher turning around being like, actually, I'm the hunter and you're the prey. Like, I was like, ooh, wait, whoa, wait, you know. So that kind of took my attention a little bit. It's very outside of the box because they try to include COVID, but whatever. It's just a different show compared to the old Gossip Girl. So the fact that it was different got a bit of a C+ from me. The show's way too predictable. You can tell who's gonna get with who next, who's gonna screw over who next. You can kind of tell the next scandal that's gonna happen. It's way too predictable. It's soap opera-y. It is definitely soap opera-y. So if you like soap operas, this is the show for you, but if you don't, then it ain't. Is not the show for you. Next is too much relatability. This show tries to relate to us in every aspect, like us as the viewer in every aspect, and that's just not it. It's not it, because they try to relate in terms of, like, you know, being afraid of your own parent because you feel that they own you and you accept the privileges that they give you, you know, being an influencer, relatability in terms of being bullied, relatability in terms of being gay, relatability in terms of being poor. And I'm just like, how much more relatability are you going to throw at us? Because we get it. We get it. You're not like the other shows. You're not like the other girls. We get it. At this point, we get it. We got it. We been got it. Can we move on and do something else? Please. My last con of this show is that it's just too much too fast. Because how in the first episode are we going to see that Obi literally leaves his lifelong girlfriend for her sister? That should have been a build-up. That should have been something that happened maybe like mid-season or maybe like 3 to 4 episodes down. It's like a 12-episode show. You could have gave us a little bit of space. You didn't have to do all of that in one episode. And then on top of that, before you get to like the 5th episode, have issues going on between the sister and Obi. Like, Zoya and Obi have these issues that like literally were unnecessary issues. Like they got together and like they were happy, and then they weren't. Like it was just too much too fast. And then on top of that, you have Julian, who is going through like a heartbreak, but not a heartbreak, and ends up hurting her sister, and her sister ends up like being like, screw you, and then somehow ends up back in the palm of Julian's hand. And the fathers who never got along are all of a sudden like brothers. And then you finally see the tip that Gossip Girl was going to drop about Julian and Zoya that was going to be like groundbreaking to kick Zoya out. And somehow Zoya ends up almost getting kicked out of the school, but then ends up coming back into the school. And it's just too much too fast. Audrey's mom going to the hospital for like drinking some, like it don't make no sense to me. Like it didn't have to be as fast as it was. And honestly, a lot of these storylines did not have time to develop. And some of these storylines had way too much time to develop. So the writing of this show needs to change in order for it to be enjoyable to watch. Because a lot of the stuff that happened in this show could have very well happened in the next season. Like there is no reason you were giving me the first day of school on the first episode for junior year, and then coming down the line a few episodes later we're having Thanksgiving and Christmas. That makes no sense to me. We should have had Thanksgiving in the next season and maybe Christmas towards the end, or Christmas in the next season after that. But I guess what this show is telling me is that it's gonna be like a one-time deal, if not a two-time deal, and then it's out. That's why we got so much so fast. And that is my overall viewpoint of this show. So with that being said, in regards to this week's What to Watch Weekly, XOXO Gossip Girl on HBO Max is a complete yawn. Do not watch, okay? That is what I'm gonna say. And my rating for this show, 5 out of 10. Okay, it's a 5 out of 10. You've heard my viewpoints, you know why, but you know, if you want to see for yourself, go ahead and give it a try. This has been What to Watch Weekly. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we are out.
What to Watch Wednesday. What to Watch Wednesday. I need a new show to watch today. A movie, a show, I know me and knows what to watch Wednesday. What to Watch Wednesday. Yeah.